have you not? What?
Look out!
Hello, and welcome back to Barnfind Aerospace. Something people say about building an airplane is 90% of the work is in the wings. I wish they'd say it to us, because it feels like we've been working on this right wing forever. The past couple of weeks have all been about the fuel tanks. All the way back in episode 1, we found the tanks Pops had made just laying around the barn, all done. All we gotta do is bolt them in, right? But as always, there's more to it than you think. Our filler caps needed a bigger hole than Pops originally put in, so we started cutting them out bigger. It's a little tricky using snips on an inside edge like this. It helps if you have the kind of snips that cut at an angle like these ones. Then we got a little bit of cleanup on the jaggedy edges, and even if you're careful, the snips are going to bend the sheet metal a little bit, so we're going to hammer that back flat. Then vacuum it out real good, because airplane engines don't act right on a diet of metal fragments. Then we use a 3D printed drill guide to get the holes where we want them. Little holes for the rivets that hold the nut plates, and big holes for the screws to go through. Here's the flange that's going to go here, and sure enough, the holes line up just right. This surface needs to be dead flat to seal right and not leak, so we got to dimple the rivet holes and use flush rivets. Then, screw the flange on to test fit, and it's looking pretty good. Y'all seen one of these, so we won't show the other 3 tanks where we did all the exact same things. So here we are drilling a hole in the side of the right main fuel tank. That doesn't sound like a great idea, does it?
That is really not a good idea.
Well, we got a good excuse. We need to install these fuel level sensors. Tank's full, float goes up. Not so full, float goes down. An empty tank is 247 ohms and full is 30 ohms. We put that in the video so we don't forget. Here's how the sender goes into the tank. The senders are different for right side and left side, and the hole pattern is asymmetrical, so in theory you can't mix them up right to left or upside down. That theory does kind of rely on drilling the holes right in the first place, so here's one of those 3D printed drill guides marked to show which way it goes. This here's the backing ring with the nut plates for the screws to go into. We'll just screw it in place and then drill and tap for a couple of itty bitty flathead screws to hold it until everything's all together. And a quick scuff to prep the surface for the sealer. More about that sealer later. We'll check it against the sender, and miracle of miracles, we did get the hole pattern right. Then we had to mash up this contraction so we could vacuum metal bits out of the far side of a hole that isn't big enough for a vacuum hose. There's a special sealant for aviation fuel tanks, and it's crazy expensive, of course, and somehow the people who make it neglected to sponsor our channel by giving us free product. That's probably because YouTube algorithm isn't super impressed with Barnfind Aerospace. So please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, pricey sealant for fuel tanks. This stuff comes in one tube, but it's actually 2 different kinds of goo that you mix up with a drill. Once it's mixed up, you've only got 30 minutes to finish the job before the goo turns to cement, so you gotta work fast, and it's good to have extra hands. Even more expensive than the goo is this Buck Rogers ray gun looking thing it dispenses out of, but fortunately Cousin Roy had one of these to lend us. We've got 2 main tanks, 2 auxiliary tanks, and each tank has a filler cap flange, and a bunch of fittings that all need to be sealed up so they don't leak. So here we are, Dad, daughter, and that crazy chicken lady all working together like a NASCAR pit crew. Here's Dad laying a bead around where the fuel level sensor goes, and that crazy chicken lady putting it in. And then we install the screws and tighten it all up. Next up is the filler cap flanges and their gaskets and the filler caps themselves. Despite the tight time frame and the extra confusion of having 6 hands, we got all this done for all 4 tanks before the 30-minute deadline was up. We got to wondering if the tanks were going to leak and if there might be a way to find out that didn't involve an airplane sitting in a 75-gallon puddle of avgas, so we set to plugging up all the bung holes.
I am Cornholio. I need TP for my bunghole.
Settle down now, not talking about that kind of bunghole, talking about these things. Anyway, the idea is to plug up all the openings in the tank and then pressurize them. Then spray soapy water on all the joints. If there's a leak, you get bubbles like this. This is another job where having extra hands and extra eyes is helpful. Fortunately, we had a lot of family back on the farm, and we got help from Uncle Eric, who's actually done this job before. Cousin Al also stepped in to help out, and movie-making son was home from film school to film it all. Whenever we found a leak, we marked it. 4 leaks total for all 4 of the tanks. It looks like Pops did a pretty good job welding these things. Aluminum welding is fussy. You gotta scrub off the oxidation layer, then clean the spot and the filler rod with acetone, because if there's any contamination at all, you'll get pinholes in the weld again. You may notice how when Pops made these tanks, he bent the edges over to make a butt weld. Settle down back there, instead of a corner weld. That's a trick he's been using on race cars for 50 years, and it helps make a lot stronger joint. After re-welding the leaky spots, Dad repressurized the tanks to test them, so now in theory, at least, we've got 4 leak-free tanks. Finally, the fuel tanks are ready to install, and that means taking them out and putting them back in again over and over. So Dad had the bright idea to speed things up by motorizing an Allen wrench. And that's how we learned about annoying stainless steel property 1012, which is thread galling. When this happens, the threads are welded in there forever and ever. Fortunately, thread galling can be prevented by this special goo. Instead of riveting, the panels that cover the fuel tanks are held in with screws, so you need a nut plate for everywhere you would have had a rivet, which means 2 rivet holes for every screw hole. Here's mechanical daughter using a guide tool to drill the extra holes. And then, of course, you gotta dimple all those rivet holes. And then you can start installing the nut plates. It wasn't until the nut plate job was almost done, Dad finally figured out a little better order of operations. You put in 1 rivet, hold the nut plate in place, then move the cleco. Then you rivet the hole you just took the cleco out of and the first rivet of the next nut plate. Then you put in the next rivet and the next nut plate, and then you keep on doing that until the job is done, or you start wanting to claw your eyes out, whichever comes first. For the next obvious step, you bust out the lipstick.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Because you can't put gas in a tank through a solid wing skin. So you put on the lipstick, put the tank back in place, and it'll leave a nice big kiss right where we need the hole. Start by drilling a little hole. Then you use a chassis punch to make a medium-sized hole. Then you put the tank back in, and you make a little dimple in the exact center of the gas cap, and you scribe a circle to mark out exactly where you want the final hole to be. Then you take the tank back out and bust out the tin snips. Then put the tank back in, drill out the screw holes, and install the finish ring. And let's take a second to appreciate this moment where there's one part of the plane that looks like it's ready to go flying. Except for the traces of lipstick, I guess.